Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do see that we are streaming and recording, and therefore you can start your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon, Council, members of SLT, members of the viewing public. We are today meeting under the Committee of the Whole agenda, and it's a budget open house on this Monday, September 13th, 2021. I see we have quorum, so I will gavel this meeting in. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a short PowerPoint presentation with some opening remarks to share. If you can give us a moment, we'll just be sharing our screen.
Okay, thank you.
This is the budget open house meeting for Monday, September 13th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Participants are reminded, ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you'll be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you'll be removed from the meeting. Participant microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by council, your microphone will be muted and staff will turn your camera off. Decorum. The budget open house is a formal committee meeting requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address council at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Public portion of the meeting. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given the opportunity to speak to council during the public portion of the meeting. Please note, all comments stated and received electronically form part of the public record and will be considered by corporate services staff when preparing the budget for council's consideration. Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That does bring us to the adoption of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. After viewing the agenda, does any member of the council have any comments or amendments to make? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that the agenda for the September 13th, 2021 special meeting of committee be adopted as circulated. And I will begin this vote with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to the disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. After viewing the agenda, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest to declare and general nature thereof? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk. Please note.
Thank you. I have so noted. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to your department reports, and we do have the 2022 budget presentation from the Treasurer, and she does have a presentation, and she can go ahead and share her screen.
Thank you. And Ms. Quinlan, you have the floor.
Okay, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. If everyone can see my screen, it's the budget open house for today. So on the first slide, this is the 2022 budget schedule. So tonight is the first of the 2022 budget, which is the public open house, the public meeting. On November the 8th, we will have the draft capital operating and water wastewater budgets. They're going to be distributed to council and to the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee for review. On the 24th of November, at the Finance and Audit Committee, we're going to be looking at the draft capital operating water and wastewater budgets. November 29th, the capital budget will be a special meeting presented to council. On the 14th of December, operating water and wastewater budget special meeting presented to council. On December 20th, the capital budget will be for consideration for approval at council. And then in January 24th, 2022, the operating and water wastewater budgets were going to be for consideration for approval at council. So this is the schedule that council approved I think a couple months ago. The town of Pelham budgets. The town's budget is a financial plan that outlines the money the town will raise and spend within 1 year. It aligns to the town's strategic priorities with the services that are delivered daily to the residents. It directs what infrastructure will be purchased, constructed, and repaired. There are three types of budgets. The first one is the operating budget, the operating levy budget. This pays for the daily business of the town, including the library. And this includes all programs and services, including staff to deliver these services, supplies, and repayment of debt for major projects. This amount is paid by your property taxes. The operating rate budget, this pays for base services such as water and wastewater treatment, and the costs for these services are charged to residents based on usage only, not by property taxes. And the last budget is the capital budget, and this is used for long-term investments like infrastructure and facilities, which are paid off over time. Road repairs and machinery are examples of capital projects. Development charges also contribute to the funding of our growth-related capital projects. And the question we always get from our residents is, where do my property taxes go? So what we have here is we have an average home assessment value of $361,445. As you recall, that our assessment values right now are based on the 2016. And annual property taxes based on this average value is $4,719. And from there, the town's portion is $1,906. The region is $2,260, and education is $553. So what's important about that is that I know when people are paying taxes, they think that all of this money goes to the town, where in fact, 60% of the taxes we receive is an outflow. We actually have to send it to the region, 48% of that, and 12% to the Ministry of Education. And the town's portion is only 40%. And the next graph is a really good graph that actually shows, what services are being purchased with the taxes that the residents pay. So if you look at the blue, that's the Niagara region of $2,260. The biggest amount, the highest expense that's paid through property taxes are the police services. So that's the biggest expenditure. And the next one after that are the regional roads. If you look at the green, which is the Pelham's portion, the 40%, our biggest expense relates to public works, the roads, sidewalks, and winter control. And then the education is in red. And we distribute this, where do my taxes go, with the property taxes that go out in June. And we've received a lot of positive feedback from the residents saying that they have found that these charts very helpful in understanding what their property taxes are paying for as far as the services are concerned. And the last slide here is the budget open house. And what's important about tonight is that, we want to hear from the residents and the businesses of Pelham for, what is the priorities that the town should be looking at for 2022. And we also want to hear from council as well. So this is an opportunity for us to get feedback from the public, and we always welcome this opportunity. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that the clerks can call the presenters.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Quinlan. That's always great to see, as you pointed out, where the tax money goes to, because everyone, not everyone, but some people think that everything stays in Pelham, and they don't realize that that we collect the taxes for the region and for the educational part. Thank you again. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur that committee receive the 2022 budget presentation by the Treasurer for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any comment or discussion.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the Treasurer's presentation? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Counselor Wink,
Yes.
Counselor Hahn,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the public portion of the meeting. For anybody that's at home live streaming, they are welcome to email the clerks at pelham.ca email address. And after all of the pre-registered members of the public had their opportunity to present in front of council, we'll check that email. Our first presenter is James Fraser, and we'll just ask Ms. Leach to bring him into the meeting. Just give us one moment.
Hey.
Mr. Fraser, we do see you in the meeting. You appear to be muted and your camera's turned off. If you'd like to unmute yourself, and it's your option if you'd like to turn your camera on. Mr. Fraser?
Yes.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
wonderful. We can hear you, and you may begin your presentation.
Should I start my video?
Yes, please.
Good. Sorry, I'm new to this.
We all were a while ago, but we are getting used to it as we go.
Good. I'll stumble through this.
Okay. You have the floor.
Thank you. As you know, my name is James Fraser. I'm here today representing over 70 active pickleball players who want to play pickleball the way it was meant to be played on dedicated pickleball courts. There are significant reasons for the courts to be dedicated and separate from tennis. Growth. When I started playing 4 years ago, there was only 10 people playing pickleball at Centennial Park. This year, there is over 70 players actively playing pickleball, 188 total paid players. That includes tennis and pickleball. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in North America. Cities, towns, communities have been taken aback by the growing popularity and need for dedicated pickleball courts. They have had to move quickly to keep up with the demands. Hamilton has 24 spanking new dedicated pickleball courts, 12 on top of the mountain and 12 at Confederation Park. Virgil converted its underused tennis courts to 6 pickleball courts. Grimsby has allocated funds for 6 new pickleball courts, and our neighbor, Welland, is putting in a whole new sports complex, including 13 courts for pickleball, 6 of which will be dedicated. I could go on, but I think you get the point. Pickleball is sweeping through the province, Canada, everywhere. Well, Pelham, we have 6 indoor courts that we share with basketball, volleyball, and other sports, and 5 outdoor courts that we share with tennis. The problem is that they are not dedicated pickleball courts, and not enough of them to handle the ever-increasing need for the sport. Conflict. We are currently sharing the courts at Centennial Park with the tennis, and there has been a certain amount of conflict and outright resentment. Given the fact that these were tennis courts, I understand fully why the conflict and resentment exists. The increasing number of pickleball players is the cause of this conflict, which, in my opinion, can only be resolved with the separation of the 2 sports, pickleball having dedicated courts and tennis having its own dedicated courts. I am not here today to take away courts from the tennis community, not at all. I am here to advocate for pickleball courts only. Having dedicated pickleball courts will allow us to schedule and control our own court time and free up tennis to control theirs, thus putting an end to any possible conflict and resentment. Enjoyment. Playing the game on properly marked courts with proper pickleball posts, nets, and fenced-in enclosed space will mean that we can play the game in the way it was intended. This makes it enjoyable, pleasurable to all. No more multiple confusing lines, adjusting nets, retrieving balls, and stoppages in play. because of errant balls on the court. Safety. Dedicated courts will just make it a much safer environment. Stepping on balls on the court is a big concern for retirees and seniors. Competition and tournaments. Dedicated courts will allow us to attract players from other clubs and have inter-club competitions. We will be allowed to have sanctioned tournaments. The same holds true for tennis courts. Tournaments bring in revenue and added activity to our local businesses. School programs and youth development. Having dedicated pickleball courts will benefit our local schools, allowing them to add pickleball to their physical education program. Social health and well-being. Pickleball popularity among seniors and retirees is life-changing. These people come together not only to play, but to talk and interact. This greatly benefits the social well-being of the community. Pickleball makes exercising fun and enjoyable, and that is exactly what we all need. Now, just in my closing statements, complete with pros and cons for each. Some options are better than others, but all are doable. I will leave it to you to review and consider each one. In my opinion, the only viable ones from the tennis courts. Option 7 and option 8 for four dedicated or 6 dedicated pickleball courts, to be built over the drainage ditch. Option 9 calls for 8 dedicated pickleball courts in place of the multi-sports pad. Option 7 could work for the short term, but I think you will all agree with me that we have to look to the future and put in enough dedicated courts to handle the future growth. I hope that what I have said here today, along with what is laid out in the proposal, will convince you to add dedicated pickleball courts to the town's strategic outdoor plans. I would appreciate being involved in the planning and implementation of the dedicated outdoor pickleball courts if you move ahead. I offer my services free of charge and promise to be helpful and constructive in that endeavor. There's a further statement I'd like to make. The Pelham Tennis Association has some funds that they have in the treasury that can be used to help pay or defer some of this cost. It's not a great amount of money, but it is some. The Pelham Tennis Club, the Pelham Pickleball Club also has some money in its treasury to help out as well. Not much, but a little bit. We can also go out and try to raise some cash, raise some money, but it would have to be under your guidance. Anyhow, thank you for listening to me, and I'm open for questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Fraser. A great presentation. Thank you for bringing these concerns to council. And I will now ask if anyone on council has questions. And I see Councillor Corr has his hand.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Fraser. Thank you very much for your great presentation. Also, I know it took a lot of work for your binder, and it made it a little bit easier to understand. I have 2 or 3 questions. First of all, maybe you could educate me. Pickleball, is it an indoor sport or outdoor sport? And what time of the year, or is it played throughout the year, or you guys close down in November?
A lot of people like to play it outdoors. It's also played indoors, so it's year-round. We will go from Centennial Park and we will migrate to your Meridian Center or The Hague or other places to play for the winter. So it is used. We don't like the name pickleball, but we can't change that.
Okay, and
It was-
one other question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Fraser. You have option 8, and it says 8 courts. Do you have an idea of what the cost would be to if we say yes, and what would the cost be for 8 courts?
Well, of course you're going to say yes. You have to say yes. It's option 9 that has the 8 dedicated courts, I believe. It's very hard for me to get costs because I don't have any power. I don't have any buying power. So to sit down and ask for people for estimates and whatever doesn't really work. What I have found out, I found the cost to be from people that had put them in anywhere from $80,000 per court to $110,000 per court.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and this question to the treasurer, could we reach out to other municipalities? And through his presentation, he mentioned about Welland and especially Hamilton. Can we find out what it costs them?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we definitely can. Right now, we are in the process, the Director of Recreation and Culture and Wellness and myself, of preparing a grant application to the Ontario Trillium Foundation. It's the Community Building Grant, and it's a grant for $480,000 that we are submitting for 4 pickleball courts. And we're bringing this to council for the September 20th council meeting for approval for this application. So you are correct, Mr. Fraser. It is approximately up to $100,000 per court. So the town is being proactive, and we think that it's a really good fit for this grant for us to put this application in. And we really appreciate the preparation that you did with your binder and that information, which we're going to include in the application. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, yeah, Mr. All done, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Fraser.
Okay, thank you. Next, I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Fraser, thank you for your presentation. I know pickleball is a very growing sport and really popular with seniors, and obviously we want to do as much as we can for seniors. Just a few questions. Firstly, is lighting a necessity for pickleball courts?
We get along, we do it in the morning as far as seniors and retirees. So lighting is not the first and foremost on our list. That could be added later. We have to consider, you're saying it's for retirees and seniors, and it's not. This game is being adopted by younger and younger people every day. We want to be cognizant of developing this amongst our youngsters, but people will come that in the evening and they will need lighting because they work all day. And that's their only chance to play is in the evening.
Yeah, and the reason for the question, Mr. Fraser, is that lighting is very expensive to install for courts. So thank you for your input on that. Your options were all with respect to these courts being put in Centennial Park. Has there been any condition or consideration of alternative locations, i.e. Harold Black Park or the old Arena Park? And by the way, staff, we've got to find a name for that old Arena Park. So anyway, what are your thoughts on alternate locations?
My thoughts are, the one thing that's important is there's a certain amount of racket and noise that is offensive coming off the pickleball. It's a hollow sounding ball, and putting it too close to housing could be problematic. Saying that, I don't care where it goes as long as it gets in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Fraser, thank you for your presentation and all the work you put into this. And it's pleasing to hear that it's going to be used in an application with Tryouts. I was wondering first of all, for and maybe you're not the person to ask this question, but the scale of the washrooms at Centennial Park, are they adequate to take care of everybody that you have on the courts now, or?
They work very well now.
Yeah.
You know, it's important, especially for the retirees and seniors, that we have some sort of access, immediate access. You know, bushes are a little bit farther away and harder to get to.
I don't think the chief would like that. The fire chief would like that too much.
Yeah, I know.
but they're adequate as they are now. And now, do you offer an accessibility type service too? Like, can it be played from a wheelchair? Because some sports can be played from wheelchairs.
I believe that it can be. I've heard of it. I don't know exactly of it, but
yeah.
I know it can be played. You know, they play hockey on a sled for people with that condition. So I'm sure that you can, and they play basketball from wheelchairs. So yeah. I'm sure you can get around on the court that way.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Maybe before we go to any other councillors, if they have any, Councillor Olson, you're not done?
Yes, no, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Van Ravensway.
Okay.
Now, does this fit into the strategic plan for recreation to have the pickleball at Centennial Park?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would work. The parks that we have, the dedicated space is very limited, and it would fit in the locations that Mr. Fraser is proposing. He has done a lot of work, and we really appreciate that. It also, you have two racket sports side by side. That's also a benefit. We did, and it's time. It's basically time for this. We tried. I believe it was 5-6 years ago, and we made the tennis courts multi-purpose with double lines, which was a little difficult to get used to at first, but the tennis association was very accommodating. But now the sport has become extremely popular, and it's time to go to the next stage.
Councillor Olson, you finished?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay, great. But one question, if I may, to the Director of Wellness. But last year at this time, we had the representative of the Pelham Tennis Association here, I believe. Were we able to do anything on that request, or could you fill council on those?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have applied, I believe the treasurer could also speak on this. We have applied a couple of times for grants, and we still have one grant out, waiting for a positive reply, and that would redevelop the tennis courts and ending in resolving the cracking of the courts. So we are hoping that will come through for us, and we can improve the courts as requested.
Great. Thank you for that. Anything you want to add to that, Madam Treasurer?
No, that's we're just keeping our fingers crossed right now.
Okay.
And this is why we decided to, move forward with the pickleball court application, because it'll tie into the other one we have outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you. And I see Councillor Hahn has her hand.
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Fraser. And yes, pickleball is fun. I tried it myself a few times. I'm probably the reason that some of the people that were playing tennis were not so pleased that evening because I wasn't very good at pickleball, turns out, and my ball was often in their court. So I fully understand where you're coming from there. My first choice, of course, would be for it to these new courts. Hopefully we'll get a grant for, will be at Centennial because we've got the lights. But I'm just wondering if back in the day, long time ago, in North Pelham, there used to be a court there. And I think it's been turned into, and I'm not certain on this, but you can tell me, to the director of rec, whether it's been turned into, I think, a basketball court, I think. But I think it's also a washroom facility, and I think it has lights. So failing Centennial, could we not think about North Pelham and give something to North Pelham?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is a multi-purpose court. That it does have the basketball courts, the basketball standards, and it is well used. Surprisingly, you can drive by there, and it's amazing how many people use that court. There's no lights in that park. We would have to bring in three-phase hydro, and it's an enormous amount because we have thought of that previously on the baseball diamonds, and as well we don't have a proper washrooms. We do have Johnny's out there. So, and speaking on that, we have parking at Centennial, we have proper washrooms, and we have the facilities already, and Centennial would be a prime location.
For sure, I agree. That would be the first choice. I just thought if failing that for some reason we couldn't, and I'd want to look someplace else that already has perhaps lighting. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on Mr. Fraser's pickleball proposal? Not seeing any. Mr. Fraser, again, thank you for bringing the pickleball community's concerns and wants to council. And I'm hoping that we do have a great team when it comes to acquiring grants. And we'll keep our fingers crossed on that and see what happens at budget time. Thank you again for your presentation.
Can I make one further comment?
You may, sir.
Good. I'm very pleased with your staff. They've done an excellent job. I can't say enough good things about them.
Very good. I'm sure they appreciate those words. Thank you, Mr. Fraser.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, our next presenter is Ms. B. Clark, and she's representing as the chair of Pelham Active Transportation Committee. And I just asked Ms. Leach to bring Ms. Clark into the meeting. Oh, I see that she is here and she's turning on her. There you are. Okay. Thank you. I know that you have a presentation and you'd like to share your screen, and you may do so.
I do. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll just take one moment to do that. This is always the moment of truth, I guess. And everyone can see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm here this evening on behalf of the Pelham Active Transportation Committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to address all of you this evening. On behalf of the Pelham Active Transportation, I would like to present to you a request for budget allocation for the year 2022. We shared a document with you earlier, which was approved at our June 21st meeting and reflects considerable review, research, and discussion by committee members, both at our regular meetings and during some working group meetings that we held. The Active Transportation Committee knows that trails, multi-purpose paths, sidewalks are really important in the town of Pelham and have become even more so as a result of the pandemic. I'm sure we can all attest to the number of people who are using our trails, sidewalks, and pathways on a daily basis. The community support for our trails is very significant, whether it's the Steve Bauer Trail or the Jerry Burkhout Trail, or the trails that are available through Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority at St. John's and E.C. Brown, or even the new pathways in East Font Hill. Community support is strong and certainly growing. Because of the ongoing interest in trail and trail development in Pelham, the Active Transportation Committee discussed a number of issues related to our trails. And we did a fair amount of review of comparable sized jurisdictions, other communities that also have trail networks. And we started to take a look at some of the best practices that other communities have developed over the last number of years. As we did our research, there were 4 primary areas that emerged as items that we thought, or themes that we thought would be important as we consider the trails and the pathways throughout the town of Pelham. And the first point I would raise with you, and which is included in our document, is the notion of information for residents. As we looked at a number of communities and the significant trails and pathways that they have, they, just as we would like to, but they stressed that the fact that information needed to be available in a variety of formats, whether it was print or web-based or app-based. And we're recommending to the town that we set aside some resources to do the following: that we improve the information about our maps, about our trails, both pedestrian and cycling routes, and we include these on our website. That we improve the information by adding information about amenities. We just spoke a moment ago about public restrooms and how important they are to everyone as they travel around town and move away from their homes during the day. Information about water stations, benches, bike repair station, bike racks, all those types of amenities that people are looking for when they head out on a long walk or perhaps cycling, that are important to them. We'd like to make that information public and available to them on the web and in print. We'd like to include a description of our trails. The Steve Bauer Trail, for example, the portion at least between Port Robinson Road and Merritt Street, is now highly accessible, and we see people with walkers and other mobility devices using that trail on a regular basis. But that's certainly not true for all of our trails. And by providing this information online, the accessibility, the degree of difficulty on some of our trails, the availability in winter months, some are passable and some not as much, it would help residents before they set out for a walk or a hike that day. We also know that there are a number of routes throughout Pelham that are really of interest to people, both in our community and for people visiting our community. So some of our routes we know, whether it's a walking route or a cycling route, are quite scenic. Other routes take you directly to businesses or villages with restaurants and services for individuals. Others might take you to some of our farms selling produce throughout the year. All of these routes, and including those that lead to our parks and recreational areas, are routes that we want to establish and publicize both on the web and in print. And finally, and this is something that more and more people are beginning to appreciate, I think, is the fact that people want to know more about our town. If there are historical features, I mean, we're obviously all very familiar with the Comfort Maple, but there are other historical features in town. There's flora and fauna in Pelham that's quite unique to our area. And perhaps both online and by using signage, we can provide more information both to residents and visitors in our community. There will always, while the web is a wonderful tool, we know that there will always be a requirement for printed maps, Steve Bauer Trail maps, Jerry Burkout Trail maps, cycling maps. People pick them up regularly, and it's always a challenge to keep those in stock. But we want to be sure that we rely on the town's website and the printed materials. And of course, we're using well-established public apps such as All Trails to publicize and make known the routes that we have available here in Pelham. Secondly, we're still interested in signage on trails. That interest hasn't gone away. I know I've spoken to council about that before. We think there are some safety issues that need to be addressed by ensuring that There are proper route markers or informational points along all of our trails so that in case of an emergency, individuals can quickly call for help or first responders know how to find those individuals. And there may also be a requirement for signage, for the trail safety, etiquette. Cyclists should pass pedestrians on the left, for example, and announce themselves. Those are some of the simple rules. And we know as our trails are more heavily used, there are conflicts from time to time. So let's inform people about the proper etiquette on our trails. And finally, just the information, as I mentioned, about historical facts, local flora and fauna, things to be aware of as we traverse the various trails in Fonthill. Thirdly, we want to emphasize connectivity within the town of Pelham. It's so important that with our trail network and our sidewalks and our multi-use pathways, that they are connected so that people can move from one section of Pelham to another easily. If they want to travel to the Meridian Center, what's the best possible route, whether they're using the sidewalk, a trail, the roads, or the multi-use paths. So it's important that we look at this connectivity. People are asking for it. They want to be able to move about town using these this protected infrastructure, and it's important that we share that information. To do so, though, I think we need to properly identify the information, establish the benchmarks, and of course, add in any proposed developments. As the town has been growing, we have been obviously paying attention to the active transportation infrastructure in our new subdivisions and new areas, and it's important that we not only provide for walking and cycling, but that we ensure connectivity from one area to another. And then finally, fourth, we want to ensure that we connect to other trail networks. What's really exciting this year, we're obviously thrilled that we were able to pave the section of the Steve Bauer Trail between Port Robinson Road and Merritt. And now the city of Welland has secured a federal infrastructure grant to continue that paved section from Merritt well on into Prince Charles Drive. Now it turns out Welland calls their section of the trail the Station Trail. We probably want to talk to them about that, but it'll be one continuous trail from Pelham into Welland, linking to all sorts of other trails within the city of Welland and beyond. And finally, we have had some very informal discussions with the Bruce Trail Club and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. And there is a Fonthill side trail which would join the Bruce Trail. And so I think it's important that you be aware of that there's an interest in that. And the Bruce Trail Club, of course, has a long established history of being very respectful of the environment and maintaining just a tremendous trail network through Southern Ontario. So having said all of this, what does it mean? What are we really asking you for? Well, as we looked at the areas that I've just described for you, we decided that it would require an investment to actually deal with some of the information that I've just presented. So this is what we're looking for. We're looking for 3 summer students to undertake the following. We're suggesting 1 student be responsible for the preparation of the web and print-based information that we're suggesting would be of interest to residents and visitors to the town. We're suggesting that 1 student be hired next summer to assist with the development and delivery of pedestrian and cycling programming. We know that the bike camp this summer was very popular with youngsters. We hear from people of all ages who are not confident cyclists that they would like to develop confidence and develop their cycling skills. And we think there's an opportunity to develop some programming for people of all ages. And of course, there are pedestrians who like to walk together and want to form walking groups or perhaps get into speed walking. We just think there's some potential to develop additional programming, and a student would be able to assist with that. The maintenance of our trails is very important, as you all know, and Public Works would likely require a student to assist with that throughout the summer. I've done some rough costing here. It'd be about $21,000 for those 3 students next summer, based on 12 weeks and a 35-hour work week. And I can assure you there's always federal or provincial assistance for the hiring of summer students. So we believe as a committee that $21,000 could be reduced significantly if you offset it with those grants. We've also indicated that some of our maps need to be updated and reprinted, and we've included a nominal costing there of $7,500. In addition to that, you'll see that there aren't any dollar figures associated with this request, but they're very significant because they do require staff time and resources within the organization. We are asking that staff prepare an up-to-date map of the current and planned trails, multi-use pathways, and sidewalks within the town of Pelham. Not only will this be important for what is published on the web and in printed materials, but it will also be important for planning purposes. The Pelham Active Transportation has been seeking an updated map, and it's been we haven't been able to obtain this. So it's important that this be developed in future, and we're hoping that staff will be dedicated to do that. Secondly, we're suggesting that staff further investigate the trail opportunities that I identified earlier, the Thorold Fond Hill Welland Trail Network and the Fond Hill Side Trail connection to the Bruce Trail. While it's important that we've had some preliminary discussions and we know there's interest among those communities and those groups, we really believe now it's up to staff to move those discussions forward, to review any grant opportunities that might apply to this, and certainly all the technical issues that would go along with establishing these types of trail networks. Third, we want to ensure that the town completes the Bike Scene business signage project. We secured Rural Economic Development Grant this year, and we're going to be signing some routes throughout the town, which primarily are intended for cyclists and are intended to feature certain key areas in town, the businesses in downtown Fond Hill, the villages in Ridgeville, Fenwick, of course, and the farms in our rural areas that also will cater to cyclists if they stop in for drinks or produce or whatever they're looking for. And then finally, we do require that additional signage on the trail routes that I suggested just a few moments ago. So those are our requests, both in terms of actual operating allocation, as well as the dedication of staff time and resources to these items. So that would be the end of my formal comments, but I'm obviously, Mr. Mayor, very open to questions.
Great. Thank you for a detailed presentation, Ms. Clark. I agree with you that in the past, our trails have indeed been our best kept secret. I think we're gradually getting the news out there, and obviously there's improvements to be made yet to get them up into the top-notch category. Thank you again for the presentation. Councillors, questions, comments on Ms. Clark's presentation and the ask from the from the transportation? And I see Councillor Hahn has got her hand up.
Thank you through the mayor, and thank you very much for the presentation. I know when I was on the regional transportation steering committee, there was a lot of talk about the bike routes and interconnectedness between municipalities and such. And they have an entire plan that they were building. So I'm not sure if you've linked into that per se, but there's probably money in there, and there's a strategy and a way forward that I think we could probably piggyback on to some degree. So I would really recommend that we use that opportunity, because there's been a lot of time and effort put into it from the regional perspective.
Thank you, Councillor. Have you looked at that, Ms. Clark? I know that the region has indeed got, I think they have 2 apps that they use for their bicycling community quite extensively. Any comment you would like to make on that, Ms. Clark?
Yes, I'll through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll just make a couple of comments. Pelham is not on the Greater Niagara Circle route, though the group is interested in expanding it. And we have some suggestions for that, and we've certainly had some input. I sit as a citizen representative on the Active Transportation Subcommittee for the region, so I do attend those meetings, and I am aware of some of the initiatives underway. Thirdly, I would say that the region every year does offer a grant to municipalities who do want to make some improvements to active transportation infrastructure, whether that's trees, benches, cycling routes, and so on. The level of that grant varies from year to year, depending on the region's budget, I guess. But I know that Pelham has been successful through Public Works in obtaining some of those grants over the last number of years. And of course, cycling is on our minds in particular because we're hosting the road race here next summer in August for the Canada Summer Games. And that'll draw a lot of attention to some of the infrastructure that we have here.
Great, thank you. Again, any other councillors, questions and comments? Let's go to Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Clark. During your presentation, you commented that there are trail maps and that they're picked up regularly. Where are those available?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, I think they're primarily available at the Meridian Community Center in the racks in the foyer. But normally, in normal times, they would be available at Town Hall. They would be available in the libraries in both Fenwick and in Fonthill. They were also left in some sort of community locations. They'd be at the parks when the parks are open in the summer. We would certainly also hand them out at events like Summerfest and at the farmers market every year. So typically that's how they're distributed, but they're always available at those locations when operations are normal.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Clark. Thank you very much for that presentation and to your committee for their work that they've done on this. I was wondering if you're familiar with the Niagara Aspiring Geopark, which will probably be a UNESCO designation probably in 2022. And it provides access to markets in Europe, Asia, and all around the world for any kind of activity. And I think it's probably a prime place to be advertising the services that we have here. And we're one of the moving the moving parts of this thing when it happens. So I would recommend that very highly because I think we really have something to sell to the rest of the world, and this would be one of the ways to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any comments on that, Ms. Clark?
No, I wasn't aware of that, so it's something that I'll certainly look into and share with the committee.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on the transportation? Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just some comments in support, and everyone's aware that I am on the Pelham Active Transportation Committee. There's a lot of great ideas being put forward by the committee, but and there's been lots of requests of staff, and staff have been very, very good and helpful in ways which they can. So I kudos to Jason and Tolga, but a lot of times we ask for requests, and the comments back to us, and rightfully so, is they don't have the resources to allocate to some of the initiatives that we want, and thus the reason for the request of the 3 students. And I think this is a great opportunity for some students as far as employment is concerned, but also getting some of the the things that the committee needs to be done to move forward. So just so you're aware that we do have staff participation, but we need resources to do more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I would like to hear probably from Ms. Van Ravensway. Have we indeed, I think in the last couple of years, I get the impression that we have made a lot of progress in getting the trails out there, because we do have some great trails in this town. I'm thinking, I love the one over Margaret Stewart Street Park. Talk about out in the woods area there. We have been making a concerted effort, have we not? And obviously we can improve on this to get these maps out to the people, out to the citizens.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as Ms. Clark noted, that we do have the maps available. Of course, here we're open and at the town hall. And, when the Active Transportation Committee is at the farmers market or, in public events, the Summerfest and so forth, they're always handing out the maps. And the thing is that the maps need to constantly be updated and reproduced. So it does cost money to do this, rightfully so.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks for those comments. Councillor Hahn?
Yeah. Thank you, through the Mayor. Just to the point that you've made, Director of Recreation, and that is having to constantly update maps. Absolutely, as we build more parks and have more amenities, clearly it would almost always be outdated, right? But through a scan code too, which is kind of the new approach, a scan code keep us updated. So anytime somebody, and most people, not all, but a lot of people now use smartphones, so simply scanning a scan code would bring you up to the latest and datest information. So perhaps that's an avenue we can think about.
Great.
May I just comment on that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. And that was actually one of the ideas that we discussed for the historical information or the flora and fauna, because we don't want a proliferation of signs along our trails, right? We don't want to clutter them up. But if there were small QR codes, scan codes that would quickly give you information about the tree or the what you might see in a particular area, historical significance of it, that would be such a great part about the community.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk, not seeing any.
John Wink is waving at me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Councillor Wink, go ahead.
To you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the maps need continuous updating, the actual physical maps, but one of the requirements is for a lot of us seniors, maps are a good thing, but for the younger generation, they do everything on their phone, and we need the ability to connect with all trails, and there's some technical requirements and a skill set to be able to get our information onto all trails, and again, in support, a student who is adept at doing something like this would help our committee immensely.
Excellent point, Councillor Wink. Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? Oh, I see Director of Public Works, Mr. Marr.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment regarding our trails, our trail systems, and the maintenance of those systems. Our public works staff don't have the capacity to dedicate somebody to trail maintenance due to the pandemic and the redeployment of staff resources during the lockdowns and during COVID. We were able over the last year and a half, 2 years, to provide more resources to that, especially in the summer months. But as a general rule of thumb, we don't have any staff that are dedicated to trail support and the maintenance of those trails. So I want to make that, just wanted to bring that point up. Also, with respect to the creation or updating of new maps, that would take somebody with some specialized abilities such as GIS experience to do that. Something like that, a summer student would be able to probably complete that project as well as other projects as well with the town.
Great, thank you for that, Director. Councillor Owen?
Yes, through the mayor, just to speak to that. So my understanding is that a map's recently been created for more of a points of interest map, but and that was done through, I believe, a grant. And for the purposes of a tear off, take away type paper map. So because that's recently been done, the addition of having trails or cycling routes, et cetera, could be added to that map. So it would significantly reduce the amount of art that would need to be created. It's just in addition to what's already there. And because you own that artwork, a lot of the work's already been done. So you could use something that's already 85% done, add some trails to it, highlight which ones are walking trails, which ones are cycling trails, so on and so forth. And Bob's your uncle, your way to the races.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Any comments or questions? Vicky or Ms. Van Ravensbury, I see you kind of have your hand up. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, that trail map, or not the trail map, I'm sorry, the map that is being produced, as Councillor Hahn said, we will be including, the trails are on the map, and right now the map is being reviewed for final touches to to get into production. So.
Wow, thank you, excellent. Glad to hear that. Anybody, any other comments or questions on the Transportation Committee's request? Not seeing any. Again, Ms. Clark, thank you for your presentation. And we will keep this obviously in mind that the budget considerations down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Our next presenter is Craig Miller, and we will just, if you can give us a moment, we will bring him into the meeting.
So, point of order, should we not vote on accepting the report for Pelham Active Transportation Committee?
I got a feeling we're going to do it all at the end, but I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do have a resolution ready to receive all presentations from the pre-registered members of the public and any member that makes comment through the email, clerks@pelham.ca, once the public portion has been completed, if that's okay with council.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Wink?
Well, did we not do a vote on receiving Mr. Fraser's?
No, we did not.
Okay. Senior's moment. Sorry.
No problem. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I do see that we have Mr. Miller in the meeting, and he doesn't have his camera on, so he can go ahead and start his presentation.
Okay, Mr. Miller, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. I've just lost you here. I'm here tonight to speak to you about the serious issue that we're experiencing in Pelham regarding the gypsy moth, the damage it is doing, and as concerned citizens, what we would like to see to fight them going forward. I've submitted the following PowerPoint file highlighting some of our issues, and I would like to take you through it if I may.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry for the intrusion. Just for the presenter, if you'd like to expand your PowerPoint, we can only see maybe 2/3 of it. If you'd like to move it perhaps up on your screen, because we can see your desktop.
Correct, yeah. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a little PowerPoint. This is 2022 Gypsy Moth Aerial Spray Program for Sumbler Road and cross-section proposals. Overview and purpose. Sumler Road from Victoria Avenue to Cream Street has witnessed significant defoliation over the last 3+ years due to gypsy moth infestation. Residents are concerned that further destruction of Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority regulated lands will continue should no action be taken to protect this vital Niagara green space. A decision from Pelham Town Council is requested on the proposal to include the identified segments of Sumler Road within the 2022 Gypsy Moth Aerial Spray Program. Previous and proposed aerial spray program. The pink outline on this topographical photo highlights the 2020 and the 2021 aerial spray zones. The blue down in the bottom left highlights the area containing the 2 proposed Sumler Road woodlots, which equate to approximately 188 hectares, I believe. I can't really see. Of dense forest. And if you refer to the following slide for a detailed depiction of the proposed 2022 aerial spray, which will include the complete western woodlot. I'd also like to point out to you on this map, all the little dots. You've got red dots, orange, yellow, green. These represent areas that Bioforest conducted an egg mass survey, gypsy moth egg mass survey, to predict the 2021 defoliation forecast. The 2022 survey hasn't been done yet, so I'm relying on past information. But anyway, the red dots represent severe defoliation. Orange dots are heavy defoliation. Yellow dots are moderate defoliation. Light green is light defoliation, and dark green is no defoliation. On this slide, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority watershed lands. This is basically the same 2 woodlots that are protected by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. On the left, you'll see these 2 areas, this area plus this area. They amount to 60 hectares. On your right is this one big mass, represents 128 hectares. I'd also just like to point out to you on this map that the orange lines you see are the assessment parcels, and the numbers represent the street addresses of all the properties that this woodlot impacts, quite a few. The Lalaman Inc. Bioforest Survey Report and Residents' Feedback. These are 3 quotes that I took out of their report, which is available to, I got this report from the Town of Pelham's website. First one, in the spring of 2020, the town sprayed approximately 120 hectares of public and private property within the urban boundaries of Fenwick and Font Hill, including a buffer along Canberra Road between both urban areas. Post-spray defoliation surveys conducted indicated a significant reduction in tree defoliation. Secondly, most healthy trees can withstand a single year of moderate to severe defoliation, but 2 to 3 years of heavy defoliation, less than or equal to 50%, can result in branch and whole tree mortality. Trees that are diseased, crowded, or stressed may die after 1 or 2 years of defoliation. And the third quote, the most severe defoliation is anticipated to occur south of Fenwick, Sumler Road, Belfour Street, Cream Street, and Foss Road. And I've included the pages in the report and the paragraphs where those quotes were taken from. Sumler Road resident feedback. When I canvassed the local neighborhood about this issue and bringing it to council, this is some of the feedback that I received from them. My opinion is that Pelham Council needs to consider areas of high forestation and not population density. Most of the time, rural residents are forgotten compared to those living in high-density subdivisions. Second, given the significant size of the woodlots residing within some of the road properties, not to mention the importance of the Carolinian forest habitats, it would be prudent for Town Council to include these land segments in the 2022 aerial spray program. And finally, although we live on Church Street, we support your efforts and would like to be included in the spraying. Conclusion. Based on the information provided in the Bioforest report for the town of Pelham, the residents of the two woodlots I have presented to council tonight feel it is important to continue the aerial spray program going forward. These two woodlots represent approximately 60 hectares at the west end of Sumler and 128 hectares bordered by Church, Cream, Foss, and Chandler Roads. These two woodlots that I present to you are also within the NPCA regulated lands and represent a sizable, provincially significant wetland as set out by the Ontario Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry. I distributed 39 letters to property owners within these woodlots and received 18 replies who want me to move forward with this request. Of those 18 replies, collectively 64 hectares of this wetland is represented. My presentation tonight might represent a larger area than the current budget will allow. However, I think it is money well invested targeting densely forested woodlots, which could be a main source of Pelham's gypsy moth issues. And finally, we feel this is a nonpartisan issue that is of concern to all citizens of Pelham. With the environment and climate change current election issues, this is a needed investment in Pelham's future. Thank you for your time, and please consider our collective request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Mr. Miller. We will open it to questions and comments from the members of council. And if you could take your screen off. Or
hover it above on the top of your screen. There's normally a green button that says stop share. Green or red button that says stop share.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Now we can see the other members of council. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any questions, comments on the presentation? And I see Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for your presentation. But my question is to the director to Mr. Marr. When's the last time we sprayed that area? And do you have any documentation of when we sprayed that area?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on the information I have, I don't think that area has been sprayed ever with regards to the gypsy moth. I could double check that, but I know since 2018 when we started to do the aerial spray programs, that area has never been included as part of our program.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so if I'm not mistaken, it's got to be over 10 years then.
Councillor Director?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I can't say for certain that it hasn't been sprayed. All I can say for certain is it hasn't been sprayed since I've been involved with the program in 2018.
And my last question to you, sir, is through the mayor. So that would have to double our budget on gypsy moths, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in 2021, our spray program consisted of 113 hectares. The current budget that we have as an operating item is 150,000. So roughly the breakout for that is 30,000 is for bioforest costs to administer the program and do the surveys, and do the post evaluations. And there's probably $5,000 for advertisements in local media and papers as per the Ministry of Environment regulations. And then approximately 110, 115,000 of that is for the actual spray. So on a $150,000 budget, we're paying right now close to $1,000 per hectare for spraying. Most of the spraying that is conducted by the town does focus in the urban areas because those trees in the urban canopy are more susceptible to defoliation and disease because they're subjected to other stresses and factors such as road salts and just being in an urban environment. The trees in the dense woodlots are more resilient, although indications show that the infestations are starting to be more in those rural areas outside of the urban areas. All indications show that the spraying that we're doing in the urban areas is effective. So there's other programs as well. There's other providers that do this spraying. Right now, we have to use a twin engine helicopter in the urban areas. It's a requirement. And so that cost is about $1,000 per hectare. So based on the information I see here, to do all that area, we would have to increase the budget by about $190,000 to complete those areas. There may be some other opportunities to use single engine aircraft in the rural areas, which would reduce that cost. I don't have those numbers with me tonight for comment, but that could be something that staff could look into.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Corr. Councillor, let's go to Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. And of course, I also want to say thank you to Mr. Miller for his presentation and to the residents who supported him. Are we nearing I know you're probably not an expert in this, but are we nearing the peak or past the peak of the reproductive cycle of the gypsy moth?
To the director.
To you, Mr. Mayor. Our consultant, that's a good question. It is generally cyclical in nature. Based on the infestation surveys and egg mass surveys that we completed over the last couple of years, it doesn't appear that the egg masses are declining in numbers. They are declining in size, which does show the start of a decline of a population. But as of right now, staff are continuing to recommend that council proceed with the spray program as per our gypsy moth spray program policy into the future. So that's what staff's planning on bringing a recommendation to council as part of the operating budget for the gypsy moth spray program this year.
Yes, thank you. Again, Mr. Meyer, like this year we had the fungus and we had the bacteria and the virus and all those things working against the gypsy moths, and then they were pretty fast out of the gate this spring, but then we had the rains and the weather that reforested everything that was pretty well damaged. So my direction is try to go and see if there's any way we can reallocate some of our funding from existing spraying into these new areas that we're talking about tonight.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we have a 3-year contract. We're in our second year now with Bioforest. They are pending council's approval of a 2022 budget. They are prepared to undertake the defoliation surveys. The egg mass surveys in probably January, February of this year in advance of a spray program development for 2022. So we'll definitely take these comments under consideration and we'll have a look at those areas outside the urban boundary.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for your presentation. This question would be for Director Marr. I think you're feeling bombarded at this point. As Mr. Miller pointed out, that a lot of this land is under NPCA regulation. Is there any way for them to foot the bill for at least part of spraying this area?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's also a conversation that staff could have with the NPCA with respect to them joining in, contributing to a spray program.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Mr. Miller, thank you for your presentation. Gypsy moths has been a big concern in Pelham for the term of this council, but I'm going to direct my question to Mr. Marr. Sorry for piling on you, Mr. Marr, but do you have any idea? I know a lot of rural landowners spray their own properties. Are you aware of how many rural acres have been sprayed by private owners and how many owners sprayed their rural lots?
Mr. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have that number to give to council tonight, but I do know that there are other private spray programs that are undertaken aside from our program, and those programs are generally much larger than the program that we undertake, that the town administers. I don't have the exact acreage that they would spray, but it is multiple times ours.
Yeah, it would be worthwhile knowing what that amount is, whether you reach out to Trees Unlimited, who do a lot of the rural spraying. I think council would appreciate some knowledge as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's we'll definitely have that answer for council's consideration when we bring the operating budget forward to council for discussion and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. One question I'll have for Mr. Miller, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way. You obviously did a lot of work on this survey and a lot of research. I couldn't help but notice, and I guess on most, if this had been a region-wide survey and you got 50% respondents, you would feel pretty happy. The fact that this survey was so condensed and you sent out 39 letters, and not wanting to put words in your mouth, I would think that you must have been somewhat disappointed that you didn't get a higher percentage backing your efforts. Could you comment on that? And did the ones that didn't reply or didn't agree, do you have any reason why they didn't want to jump on the wagon as such?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I was sort of disappointed at 18, but I also thought you can't get 100% response. You're never going to get that for anything. So I thought, 18 out of 39 is pretty good. I know it was under 50%, but it was close. It's just like voting. You're never going to get everyone out to vote. So I took that into consideration, and I haven't really reached out to any of the neighbors who didn't respond, only because it's so rural out here and so many people like the privacy. I didn't want to impose on people.
Excellent.
So I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't know if there was some hidden reason or, and like you say, if this had been a region wide, I know when they go region wide, if they get 5 or 6% return, it's pretty good. So and in that aspect, you did get a fair amount of return on your efforts. And again, I appreciate the effort that went into this and the research you did to bring this report to council, and council really does appreciate your work on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Miller? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you again for your presentation, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Our next pre-registered member of the public is John Enslin, and we'll just bring him into the meeting room now. If you could just give us a moment. I do see the presenter is now in the meeting. If he'd like to unmute himself. Oh, there we are.
Okay, sir, you have the floor.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm from Pelham Minor Baseball, and I've got a presentation, so I'll just get it started. I got to pull it up here, and then I'll screen share it. All right, so this is my first year on the board with the Pelham Minor Baseball Association. I've got 3 kids involved in it at 3 different age groups. So I'm pretty busy with things, and I thought it was my opportunity to get involved in the community. So I just want to go through a little bit about what my request is for today. Just our vision and for our season and just for the league in general. Our teams provide children the opportunity to take part in healthy competition, learn about teamwork, building friendships, and engage in much needed exercise. Of course, with the pandemic over this past year, we've really noticed the level of outdoor activity has increased. So just a bit of a review from last year. The 2020 season was a bit of a wash. And so we weren't sure what that was going to do with our numbers. We had a couple of teams organize just some informally. But with our short registration and all the uncertainty with this spring, we still managed to get 165 kids registered for this summer's season. That's down from 2019 with 218. Other centers reported an average decline of 50% due to COVID. So our numbers did not take a significant hit as a lot of other centers. So this fall, we plan on hosting tryouts for 4 rep level teams due to the high interest that grew this season. We anticipate more house league teams next year due to the number of kids that were put on the wait list at the beginning of the season. We had a short window for registration and needed to close it quickly. And subsequently, we had a lot of families looking to still get into the baseball season after we had closed it. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So our things are looking hopeful still for numbers to get back up to well over our 200 mark that we've had. So this past weekend, we hosted a U9 NDBA playoff in Centennial Park. So we had crowds in the park. It was quite busy. We had nearly a dozen games over the course of the weekend with approximately 100 people attending each game between families and spectators. The park was pretty busy between that and the Lions also were doing their raffle, which was limited to online only, and they didn't have the car show. So thank goodness we were still able to have the park available for that. We also annually host a couple of tournaments within the park for U11 and U13 rep level baseball. So we have teams coming in from all over Ontario for those tournaments. We're looking forward to getting those back up and going again next year. So I wanted to present a couple of things that we've noticed, and we've had I guess findings this past year due to last year's setbacks. Just some deterioration in some of the fields, the condition. I also wanted to review some of the outstanding items. So we have extending the dugout screens on field C3 in Centennial Park. The tops have screening on them, but the backs do not. I have some pictures in the next slide that you can see that.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. To the presenter, we don't see your screen. I apologize. I didn't realize you thought you were sharing a screen.
I'm sorry. Well, okay.
So if you have your presentation up, you just need to take your mouse, scroll down to the bottom. There should be something like a green button that says share screen. You need to click on that.
Thank you for saying something.
Sorry, when you're talking about pictures, and I thought you probably want us to see those.
Yes, that'd be great.
So did you find the share screen button?
There we go.
Yes, we can see the screen.
You can see it? Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll just quickly go back through some of the slides here that I thought I was showing, but just talking about. So there's just a couple of pictures of teams playing in the park. Some of the numbers that I had for this season and our anticipated levels for this coming season. We've got a few items that we wanted to see some improvements on the fields. So one of the things would be extending the dugout screens on C3 to include the backs of the dugouts as well as the tops. The tops have been done, but the backs were never completed. So this leaves the kids sitting in the sun, especially in the late afternoon. They're sitting on the bench and they get to see the shade, but they don't get to sit in it. So they get pretty hot sitting on the benches. So we were hoping that was an upgrade that we could do through that. And I'm not sure how that would fall, whether it would be a capital or operating. I believe these may have been part of the original plans for the park. I seen there was in previous emails with the Minor Ball Association at the budget meetings, and there was talk of bullpens with mounds and plates as well that had been started back in 2016 and they'd never been completed. So those were some things that I was hoping we could get completed. With that, on C3, we've noticed some settling and a lot of unevenness on the infield. So we're getting lots of strange bounces and things, or spots that are puddling after rain. And we're hoping that could be addressed a little bit and maybe raise the level of maintenance. I know it's been passed around a little bit, as it used to be, I believe, Public Works, and then it was under Parks or Recreation. And I think it's a little bit unknown as to where that responsibility lies. Is I think one department cuts the grass, the other one rakes the field and lines it for us. So I'm not sure what we can do to improve that. Another one was C2, which is the softball field, which is in Centennial Park, and which typically was a softball field. It does not look like it was used at all for softball this year. We did book it several times for hardball practices, as we were booked up. All our other fields were booked up. The problem with this field is we can't play games on there because it's not set up for hardball games, for a couple of reasons due to base distancing, as well as netting. It doesn't have any netting behind the backstop. So if we were to do any pitching and hitting, we would lose a tremendous amount of baseballs into the wooded areas and the neighbor's property behind the backstop. So a thought was on that was to add some screening and some base anchors, and that's something then we could start utilizing as practices as the need is increasing for fields in Centennial. So here I've got some pictures. where I talked about the screening behind the backstops. So the sun comes directly this way from the west there, and it's right on the backs of the kids. So they sit in the sun, but they get to see the big spot of shade in front of them. If we could extend that screening down to protect kids a little bit from the sun, because there's no shade in that area. The second one was these backstops. There's one also on the other side of the team, the other side of the diamond where the other team sits. And my understanding was originally there were supposed to be mounds installed there and plates for pitching practice and warming up during game situations. Right now there's nothing but grass, so the players need to pace it out by measuring their feet and kind of guesstimating the correct distances. So that would be a real added benefit, particularly if we get to 4 rep level teams next year. There's a bit of a higher expectation at the diamonds for some of the teams coming from different centers. So I've also included here a picture of the mound, the pitcher's mound, which you can see is just lost a lot of shape and height. We'd love to see those things as well, just raising the bar a little bit in the standard for the upkeep on that, as well as the picture to the right. I've marked in blue. Those areas are low and create quite a lip and create some trouble handling balls that are hit hard on the infield. Another area then on the C2 where I talked about the backstop. So you can see you have the large trees behind and foul balls without netting just go back there. We would lose a tremendous amount of balls if we tried playing hardball there. So the thought was to get some netting strung across. I imagine this could be done at a reasonable price and at least give us the ability to use that as a practice field as it's not being used by the softball league currently. It also has lights, so we could potentially do some night games there. The major ask that we have for this year is with the 4 rep teams looking to be fielded next year, the one major item that we're missing that we have at every other trainings or at every other center in Niagara is a batting cage. We would love this tool. It's essential for training athletes, especially at the rep level. And it's just that missing element in our park. We've worked with a local architect in the town for the I believe it's the master plan for the park, and done a bit of research and gathered some numbers for budget purposes. For budget purposes, we're looking in the $25,000 to $40,000 range. I've also talked with some local business owners as well as the Lions. As we share the park together, we tend to talk with the Lions quite a bit, and they'd love to help us with things financially if that's something that we could do to help make it happen. So I don't want to be too long, and if you've got any questions, fire away.
All right. Thank you, John, for a great presentation. Very detailed. Thanks for that. Thanks for the pictures. It's always better to visualize the needs when we can see the pictures depicting them. Okay, Council, any questions and comments? Councilor Olson, are you adjusting your computer, or was that your hand up?
Mr. Mayor, I was taking myself off mute in advance, so I just wanted to thank Mr. Insland for his presentation and ask. I want to ask Mr. Maher, about the lights. Where do we stand on the lights, the new lights in the park right now? Or
Hey, Mr. Mayor, the lighting project, I think there was $150,000 that was approved through the 2021 capital budget with respect to lighting the baseball diamond, which is referred to as C3 at Centennial Park. We're currently we're in the RFP process with that still. We've also identified a need for additional lighting on a soccer field at Centennial Park. This will be coming forward most likely for council's consideration as part of a 2022 budget. And if that's the case, then we would defer that project that was approved in 2021 to do those projects together for economies of scale. So that's where that project stands.
okay, and to Mr. Insland, what is your season for baseball at the park? Is it the month?
It's different this year. We're still playing ball. We're just finishing up the playoffs right now, and then we'll be doing tryouts yet, probably into October, and then as soon as the fields are considered open by the town, we start using them for rep practices earlier in the year. The regular season for house league and regular games would extend from June. First week of June until the end of August, steady through those months.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other, I see Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to John. When you showed a picture of the batting cage, does that include I presume there's a pitching machine, right?
Yeah, we have several as an organization. I believe we have 3 of them. And a pitching machine isn't necessarily the tool. Quite often we would set up an L cage within it. And the idea being you can have someone stand behind the L cage and throw, 100 balls, and they're not scattered all over the field. They're hitting the netting. They're right in front of you. So we can be using it for pitching practice and hitting practice, right? And it contains the balls without hitting these fly balls everywhere or scattering them all over the field.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? I guess I have one that I will direct to the director. Actually, let's go. I'd like to ask Vicky first, Ms. Van Ravensway. Is town enrollment in softball, is that reaching the point where that softball diamond in Fenwick is? Did it not get used this year because of COVID, or is it because the interest is starting to wane in that sport?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, normally the fields would be used by Pelham slowly. Due to COVID, they had very limited play. They mainly played at the Klager Park this year.
Okay, so COVID then is the main, okay, thank you for that. And to you, Director Marr, the improvements needed in the field, whether it be the pitching mound and the out in the field, that would be higher, does that require some outsiders to do the mounds and what, or is that something our guys would be able to handle, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I may direct this question to Ms. Van Ravensway. Basically, the Public Works used to take care of the maintenance of the fields, and I don't know that exact answer, and Vicky may have that. As it is right now, because of the larger equipment involved with the grass cutting, Public Works is responsible for cutting the grass, and the actual maintenance and lining of those fields is conducted through the Recreation and Wellness Department.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go back to Ms. Van Ravensway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I know that staff were preparing to do additional major, if you want to call it major maintenance at the end of the season. And I know Pelham Minor Ball went later this year. And I do know that we have purchased additional clay for the for the maintenance of the diamond. So it will be happening. And I also, excuse me, know that at the end of each season, staff meet with the associations for their list of improvements. Season hasn't ended, and our budget meeting is already upon us. So a little bit of delay here.
Yes, because the field improvements, while time consuming probably for staff, not a lot of money involved in whether it be filling up a hole or what have you, right? Mm-hmm. Yes,
that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments from any members of council? Not seen any. John, thank you for your support or for your presentation. You didn't mention it, so I take it you did not win the car that the Lions were after.
No.
Okay. Again, thank you.
It was funny. I wish I was there. I was out of town with my kids in another city playing baseball there, so I didn't even get to see that or see the tournament that was hosted in the park. Well.
Okay, great. Yeah, with 3 youngsters in the game, you must be you and your wife must be pretty busy.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Again, thank you, council wishes to thank you for your presentation, and we will keep your request and take that into consideration at budget time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That concludes our pre-registered members of the public. And if council will give me a moment, I will check the clerks@pelham.ca email address to see if we received any comments from those watching from home.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that it is 7:17 and we have not received any input or comments through the clerks@pelham.ca email address, and therefore council can close the public portion of the meeting and move into committee input once I do read this resolution into the record. So we do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn that committee receive the following 2022 budget presentations and refer to staff for inclusion in the budget considerations. 1, James Fraser. 2, B. Clark, Chair, Pelham Active Transportation Committee. 3, Craig Miller. 4, John Enslin, Pelham Minor Baseball Association. And that committee receive any email comments received during the public portion of the meeting at the clerks@pelham.ca email address, which none were received. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any debate.
Okay, any debate on any of the presentations that we had before us tonight? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. And Mr. Mayor, that does bring you into committee input.
Okay. Any input on tonight's presentations? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there is no committee input, then we'll be moving to adjournment, which would be a motion put forward by Councillor Hahn that the special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Any discussion on adjournment, which I don't expect. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is 7:19, and this vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. Mr. Mayor, you may gavel out your meeting.
Okay, good night, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.